For the 10th time in the 10th season of the 24H series, the Creventic promoted championship arrives once again in Tuscany, and it's the 10th edition of the Hankook 12 Hours of Mugello across the next 3 days, with qualifying just around the corner, around 4 minutes away from the relatively brand new format of qualifying that was introduced about a year or so ago. My name's Johnny Palmer. I'm delighted to say that we're bringing you the full Radio Show Limited treatment of this 10th edition of the Hankook 12 Hours of Mugello, with myself in the Global Broadcast Centre, joined in a moment by Peter Mackay as well, and also we'll have all the stories from the pit lane as it will be in qualifying, and from the grid for tomorrow. Remember, it's a split race, so yes, 12 hours in total, but split across both Saturday and Sunday, and all about where you are towards the checkered flag on Saturday evening in terms of whether you're going to be on the lead lap or not for the restarted race on Sunday morning. Plenty to delve into. It's a brand new season for the European campaign, the first of 5 races then. And this is the first of 2 visits to Italy, in fact, because later on in the year we'll be heading due east of here for a brand new event on the Creventic calendar, the 12 Hours of Misano. But before that, in exactly 4 weeks' time, we'll be in the Ardennes for the 12 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps, that over the weekend of the 19th to the 21st of April. The 24 Hours of Portimao is the second 24-hour race of 2024, following Dubai in January. Then that much-awaited trip to the coast, not far from Rimini and Misano, the 12 hours of that event at the start of July, and the 24 Hours of Barcelona, one of the very few events more long-standing than this one, and that's the 24 Hours of Barcelona just outside the city in the middle weekend of September. So a cracking season of European action to come. This visit to Mugello has not been without one or two logistical problems, which we'll have plenty of time to explore as well. But every credit to the Hankook 24-hour series and those behind the scenes at Creventic for making sure that we are racing this weekend in Tuscany. You'll know all about the global problems of getting ships through the Red Sea at the moment, and that means that some of the kit that needed to come back from Dubai and also Yas Marina has been delayed on the trip around the south of Africa, and therefore some changes, pretty significant changes, to how the cars will be refueled this weekend. And there have been various bulletins issued to make sure the teams are fully in the picture there. But we're winding the clock back to how we used to do refueling at this event, which has been going since 2014, actually prior to the first full official season of the 24H series, which was the following year. Dubai's long-standing, of course, since 2006, but this event now celebrating its 10th anniversary as well, and we've done 10 events. Only missed one, and that was in 2018 when it did not appear on the calendar. Amazingly, Mugello continued, though, throughout COVID and throughout the latest dramas as well, in getting containers from different parts of the world. So 15 minutes on the clock. We will hear from our other Radio Show Limited voices in due course, but 15 minutes for this first qualifying session then, as the cars work their way out towards the pit lane exit road. And the new format for qualifying is 3 doses of 15 minutes. You have to use different classification of drivers within that, and then it is a combined time. So add the times up, divide by 3, and that gives you your grid position. And what that really extends is the fact that it's a team sport, of course, in the race, not only the teams in the garage, but then also your driving combination. From last year, the driving combination is completely used in qualifying as well. So it's not all about selecting your quickest driver, plugging them in and getting them to do the quickest lap possible. The AM is involved, the Pro-Am is involved, and then a Pro, if you have one, will also do the final session. So this is a perfect time to bring in our other voice in the Global Broadcast Centre, Peter Mackay, who is installed and ready for, I think, your first Mugello 12 hours.
Good afternoon, Johnny. Yes, it is my first Mugello 12 hours. I'm very excited indeed. I'm so excited that I've been busy on my in-house simulator doing some laps. I don't think I would have been troubling the scorers in the real world, though, I'll be very honest.
There's something special about this place, though. I mean, principally, bike fans will know it all too well. It works so well when you're on two wheels. And when we first started coming here in 2014, I was a little bit unsure as to how it would lend itself to multi-class racing. It is absolutely superb, in actual fact. It's a momentum circuit. If you make an error at the start of the lap, you're really trying to find that time by the middle point of Arrabbiatas and Scarparia, because it could be so costly. It reminds me a little bit of Donington Park in that there's a single racing line, and if you end up off that, maybe through traffic or otherwise, that's a whole lap scuppered.
It is, and you mentioned the Arrabbiata corners. They're one of the keyest, the most key areas of the circuit, because you've got huge amounts of aerodynamic grip being deployed there. So the GT3 cars coming through there, if they come up against a GT4 car, which doesn't carry anything like the same mid-corner speed, we could see some real disagreements in traffic there. So negotiating that traffic is going to be really, really tricky for our drivers when we get into the race on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, there's definitely good places to find traffic, i.e. the very long start-finish straight here, and then bad places like into Corin Chow, turn 12, the Biondetti chicane, which, as I mentioned, you don't want to be getting offline there, because if you're slightly wide at 13, you could be in the scenery by the time you get to 14. Buccini's a hard stop as well, and you've got to be patient, because that's actually a tighter corner than a hairpin. You're going for probably 190, maybe 200 degrees before you open the steering up. As the Mercedes, one of the GT4 cars, works its way now out onto the racetrack. Get you some drivers in terms of who has been installed for this opening session in just a tick as well. But as I mentioned, a lot of the teams are hamstrung in terms of who they can use for this first session, because it's really setting the bedrock, the foundation. This is where often a qualifying campaign can be won and lost, though, because there's a bit more variance between the drivers that have been installed in these cars. So the Mercedes from Bugera ZM Racing, the team with so much heritage in truck racing, have David Versecki, the man from the Czech Republic, who has had plenty of European truck racing key events in his time, but he's also rather swift in a GT4 car as well. That's the 416 then. We've got Rainer Partel in the number 431 BMW M4 for Swiss racing team Hoffer, but they're being run by Bonk Motorsport. And then the Lion Speed GP Porsche 718 Cayman, which has Dennis Bone at the wheel, number 424. So far, we haven't seen the Spanish Mercedes from PCR Sport. I'm hoping that's just a slight delay rather than a more significant one, because if you miss this session, Peter, you have to have a time from it, and it's an automatic start from the back of the grid if you don't post a time in Q1.
And you will then, if you're in the GT4 class like we're seeing on track right now, then you will be effectively caught first by the chasing pack, and that's a position you don't necessarily want to be in, because you can be shuffled back quite quickly. So you really want to be getting on with it, and the Hoffer BMW already getting on with was the first to really set an indicative lap time, and coming across the line right now with Rainer Partel on board. Doesn't improve that time. In fact, yes, does. 2:02.2 straight out the box. Very impressive.
So yeah, going a decent chunk clear. If you have got the online timing in front of you, then the first column labelled Qualifying 1 or Qual 1 will give you the time being set in this session, and then the second segment of 15 minutes will give us a time for the Qual 2 column. And you get the pattern, but as we go through the various sessions, we'll also get an average being populated into that first column as well. If you've not found live timing so far, then you can do so from the 24hseries.com website, or just go to livetiming.getraceresults, all one word, .com/24H series. But as I say, probably quicker or easier to go to 24hseries.com, and then there's a little sticky out bit there that labels where you can view the race, where you can consume the race, and there's also a live timing tab as well, which sort of jets itself out from the right-hand side of the screen once you go to that site, making hopefully the location of live timing nice and easy for you. Vincente Dassi in the 418 Mercedes has now appeared from pit lane. So the PCR Sport Mercedes will give us the full complement for this session. Breathe again that they've not got problems this early on in the weekend. And I'm sure this session, Peter, will give us ample time to delve into the various problems that have beset the championship following on from the Middle East Trophy, which seems like a number of weeks ago now, but it just shows how long it can take container ships to travel the world in the current climate. And there's had to be quite a bit of quick thinking, I'll say, by the championship to make sure that we are racing this weekend and on a fair playing field for all, because it sounds like a significant amount of kit is contained on that ship and not being able to get to Mugello on time.
That's one thing that the 24H series are renowned for, is adapting to these situations as and when they occur, and there's a lot of things that are completely out of the control of any race series. Several race series have found difficulty so far in 2024. We live in interesting times, to say the least. So great effort from the organisers to be able to pull a solution together where everyone, as you say, can race on a clear, clean playing field, an even playing field. That's very, very important in this championship. We have a huge variety of drivers taking part from all over the world, from drivers who are making relatively early steps in their international motor racing careers, and then you've got 9-time World Rally champion in Sebastian Loeb, and double Le Mans winner, double ALMS champion in Romain Dumas, and many, many others. So there's everyone and anyone comes along to take part in these events, and the championship do a great job of finding that balance where everyone can be competitive and enjoy their racing. That's super important.
There's something definitely special about this event through the years as well. It seems to just draw upon those from other disciplines of motor racing, but eager, perhaps at a more quieter point in the season, middle of March, where they've got the calendar availability, and it's also a very pleasant location away from the track, of course, as well. Plenty of great food, good wine, and fantastic scenery as well. Although I know this part of the world took a bit of a battering yesterday or overnight with a significant thunderstorm, and that has all cleared away, thankfully, in time for the first qualifying session of the weekend. 6 of them in total, and it is still the 416 Mercedes that is setting the pace with a 159.353. So David Vasecki is actually going a little quicker now than Rainer Bartel. And Rainer in that rejigged fueling area briefly. Fueling taking place not in the pit lane, and if you're new to the 24H series, then that might be a bit of a surprise for you, but it means that with no hot refueling in the pit lane itself, then fireproofs are not mandatory, are not essential. And when we get to the really warm rounds of the season, like Portimao in later on in the year, often shorts and t-shirts are the order of the day in pit lane. They are just about still permitted, but you don't need to wear the full fireproof overalls because the fueling is done in a completely separate quadrant, and here it falls before the pit lane. Sometimes we go to venues where you do your stop with the team, the tyres are changed, the driver's changed, and then the car trundles off into the fueling area after the main pit lane. Well, here it's a sharp right into a 20 km/h speed limited fueling area where at least one of your team has been sent, and that's again something that's had to be readjusted because the refueling equipment that is on site this weekend is not the highest tech stuff that was brought in the last few years, and that's the reason why we've had to revert to the tag system, one green tag, one purple tag, and the amount of fuel you can take on board at each of your race stops is governed by the track circuit state. Is it green or is it purple, as in code 60? And therefore it'll be less fuel that you can take on board if we're under caution, code 60 or 60 km/h. Kind of like a virtual safety car, and it enables the race director to neutralise the race within seconds, really, to make sure that a car can be recovered safely, and the rest of the field, therefore, is tempered, their speed significantly tempered down to 60 kph. 3 cars now in the pit lane, so Vincente Dassi in his Mercedes will have a clear road in front of him. A 2:07.8, his best time so far. But this is what I mean about this session possibly being the widest between the best time and the slowest time. It's not quite 10 seconds, 8 or so, 8.5 in fact, between Versecchi's initial effort and Vincente Dassi. Some may be settling for this though, because there's only 3 minutes left on the clock, and although the Hankook tyre is very, very good across a stint, it will only offer you peak performance for the first few laps, Peter.
It will, yes. So the drivers have to be very careful how they bring it in, and the sectors look a lot better this time for Vincente Dassi, so may be able to improve on the 2:07.813 much better now. So coming around Buccini, very, very difficult right-hander where you're actually in a kind of blind braking zone. You go over a slight crest and you negotiate that very long right, and then through the quick chicane of the Biondetis. So we'll see what Vincente's got up his sleeve here. Most of his experience is in touring cars, but did have a couple of runs with PCR Sport in the 24H series last year. Let's see what he can do as he comes up to the line.
It's a glorious sound as he shoots across the stripe, and the time is a 2:08.281. So although he improved through the first sector, the middle sector is where he's losing a little bit of time. I think that David Versecchi's done a 37.1 on his in-lap through that segment, and Vincente is losing about 4 seconds, therefore, in an identical car. They're both AMG GT4s. So Versecchi, a little bit more confident, perhaps. The GT4 car carries far less aero than the GT3 cars that we'll be seeing later on, but nevertheless, if you can be brave and if you can be fully committed into some of these chicane-based corners, of which there are so many around the Mugello circuit, then the reward is immediate on the timing screen. Down the hill through a real challenging part of the circuit, Casanova, Savelli, over the road bridge there. That's where you gain access to the infield if you're driving in from the main entrance, as it dives underneath the circuit, and the lowest point of the racetrack is at Savelli. And then the Arrabbiatas, a really rewarding section of the track when you get them right, as Dassi has shown some improvement, quite a bit of improvement actually through Sector 2. Still not as quick as David Versecchi, but a 40.7 shaves a further second, maybe half a second actually, off his earlier good time. So a 30.0 needs again to find about a second through there, ideally, for PCR Sport.
Looking through the lap, but on those, just only, like you said, Johnny, only a few real hot laps available from the tyre. But when we get into the race tomorrow and Sunday, I tell you what, the left-hand side tyres around here at Mugello are going to take an absolute pounding. Arrabbiata 1 and 2, very, very hard on the tyre. So the drivers are going to have to be careful to manage that. Over the line comes Vincente Dassi. Does improve ever so slightly. It's a 2:07.2 this time. A little bit off the pace.
So the other thing to think about is that the cars will be getting lighter throughout the course of the sessions, but the checkered flag has been waved. That because there'll be no refueling between the sessions, so effectively the cars go into Parc Fermé and then they're sent back out again with their new driver. But Vincente Dassi across the line, he did improve with a 2:07.279. And as that car starts to slow down and head back towards the pit lane, we can head there for the first time this weekend to catch up with some stories floating around on Friday.
Ciao a tutti e benvenuti all'Autodromo di Mugello. Questo fine settimana è la prima gara di serie 24 ore presentata da Hankook. Hello everybody and welcome to the pit lane. It's John Hindhaugh and Di Binks with you here in glorious sunshine in fantastic area around this beautiful circuit. The first 15 minutes over and done with, just the 4 cars. We have 2 more segments to go. Remember, the teams have had to decide exactly how much fuel to put into the cars, because you're not allowed to touch the cars, not allowed to put a new set of Hankook tyres on the vehicles within this session. I hope you appreciate the amount of effort that I've gone to look as Italian and sound as Italian as possible with me tortoiseshell glasses and me Adam Driver-esque Enzo Ferrari grey hair here. I borrowed it for the weekend. It'll be going back on Monday. It's been a little bit of a bit drama for the series particularly, but they've come out of it rather well, I think, and they've exercised the usual Creventic pragmatism. Let's celebrate the fact that despite those problems that Johnny was talking about early on, we've got a race this weekend and we've only actually lost 1 car. That was the Vortex 2.0. They were hoping to run 2 cars here this weekend, but the original chassis is still bobbing gently outside the entrance to Europort at Rotterdam. That unfortunate situation has been, I mean, it would have stymied a lot of bigger series than Creventic, but they've said, no, we're not going to accept that. We're going to come and race. The teams are here. And despite not having all of their equipment, we've got a fuel station. It has necessitated some changes, which Johnny and Peter will go through for you, to make the race happen, and I actually think it's brilliant. The paddock looks fantastic. We've got 57 cars in support races as well this weekend, so it's going to be a nice busy weekend, and certainly the surroundings are absolutely gorgeous. And it's not just me who'll be talking to you this weekend, because coming in on my right-hand side is Diana Binks, who I think this is your first time for Creventic here.
No, I have been here before. I was trying to think about that when we were in the car on the way. I wasn't really sure, but yeah, been here before, and it's definitely a superb event, as you've just been saying, John. And just to be here this weekend to get ready for another one. Lots of familiar faces, familiar teams still here, all looking to battle it out. And it's been a great atmosphere so far in this build-up this morning. Everyone's been quite patient and ready, but they really want to get on with it now.
There's a great atmosphere in the paddock, which I think always is accentuated by the fact the central team catering. And whilst we were sitting around in the sunshine at lunchtime having a little light lunch, everybody just wanted to get going. And effectively, that's what these sessions are for, to get people into the swing of things, Di.
Yeah, just to get used to looking at all the stuff that they need to go through to check before they get into that setup. Some of the teams don't have all their equipment with them, so getting used to that new equipment and how that works within the team and what the guys are doing, you know, around the car. Just taking that time just to get ready.
It is a 2-part race here, as the guys have mentioned. So coming into the last half an hour, 15 minutes of Saturday is going to be a key point. Remember, the pit lane closes 10 minutes before the intervention, as it's called, before the suspension of the first part of the race. And that's given the fuel, they're called fuel penalties. They're really a fuel reset to help with the, to help offset and mitigate the fact that we haven't got the, let's call them the smart pumps. It's all about fuel flow, and that we'll cover in more detail tomorrow, but it is something that we're going to keep an eye on. As you heard, the pit lane hooter there means we're ready to get going for another 15 minutes in this beautiful sunshine, and here comes the BMW straight away going out. The Bonk Motorsport entered car heading towards the end of pit lane for the second 15-minute segment of GT4 qualifying.
And exactly the same amount of fuel that was in the cars at the end of the previous session. Very little can actually be adjusted on the cars. You can change your driver. You have to do that bit, of course, and perhaps a tyre pressure check as well. And out they go once again. The drivers underlined on the graphic is actually the driver that has done the first session. Next drivers to be confirmed in a moment, just as soon as they trip the timing segment, the loop at the end of the pit lane. It's Michael Bonk in the 431 BMW, So that was the car that both John and Diana saw driving past them at the start of this session. The Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport M4 GT4. Daniel Miller, the American driver, in the Lion Speed GP Porsche 718 Cayman. And it'll be Josep Pereira for PCR Sport. The one car that is a little tardy at the start of this session, but nothing to be worried about so far, is the Bugera ZM Racing Mercedes for the United Arab Emirates flagged team, although with strong ties to the Czech Republic with its truck racing background. And the 416 car, I'm sure, will be out very, very shortly, because that was a quick car in the hands of David Visecki.
Bugera, one of the leading teams, are very close to winning the championship in GT4 last season, and really, really strong. Like you said, John, a huge background in truck racing and also Dakar buggies too. So definitely one of the most diverse teams. The PCR team here in this GT4 class, they also have a bit of off-road experience in rallying, and they also run Neil Solon's in the Andros Trophy on the ice ones too.
So it doesn't matter what surface you drive on, and indeed what size of racing vehicle either. It sounds like that the 24H series will attract all. And again, this is down to perhaps the timing of this event, in that there's not a great deal of racing that's happening in terms of the big European championships. Some of them, I suppose, do start in March, others, though, delayed until April. So there's a window for one or two calendars to slot this Mugello 12 hours into. And the idea behind that is to try and get people hooked as early as possible to the Hankook 24H series. And Adam Lashko, again, a driver that has heritage in cars rather bigger than a Mercedes AMG GT4, certainly loving his time within the 24H series so far. He's about a year into his career within this type of racing and getting more and more experience behind the wheel of a GT4 car in the typical Bugera livery as well, with the black, red and white. Through the Arabiatas, there was just a brief dab in the brakes there, I noticed, through the second of the right-handers, so you can't quite go full throttle through there. If you are in a GT3 car, it would be an entirely different story. Let's get to John Hindhaugh, though. Who have you caught up with?
I'm down at Lion Speed, Johnny, excuse me, with the driver who's just got out of the car, Dennis Bourne. Well, how was it out there? You were the first ones to go out competitively today.
Yeah, it was very good. Actually, I had new tires, so it was like my fastest lap today, so I'm actually pretty fine with it, what I did, and yeah, it's good.
Huge amount of water fell on the circuit last night, so any rubbering in is all gone. Is it almost that you had to start again today, or did you keep the same settings on the car that you had earlier in the week?
I think we started with the same settings we had yesterday. For sure, it was still wet this morning, but it turned dry very quickly. So yeah, I think my second outing I was already on dry ground, so it was like pretty the same than yesterday. Then yeah.
Now, for us standing outside and watching, this is a beautiful circuit. We love to see the cars going around. What's it like from the inside of the cockpit of your Porsche GT4?
Oh, it's like very fast, actually, the circuit. It's a lot of like long corners where you have to really go on the edge of the tire, and that's like a lot of fun to me.
What's your favourite part of the track so far?
I think it's Arabiata, because you go so fast there, and yeah, just releasing the gas a little and then going through, it's really nice.
Right, there's four cars in this class, so pole position is perhaps not as important as the other classes, but there's still a bit of bragging rights overnight. What are you trying to achieve in this session today and for the rest of today?
I think we just want to go as quick as we can, and so yeah, we're looking for pole, but we will see. Like, we don't know actually how fast the other drivers are, so we will see in a few minutes maybe where we can go and what we can aim for.
Go well for the rest of the weekend. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
We were also, Peter Mackay, rather puzzled by the fact that there were some Mathieu Jaminet overalls being worn there, but you think you've worked out the reason why?
Yes, Mathieu Jaminet, one of the elite drivers in the Porsche factory squad, driving the Porsche 963 prototype for Team Penske Porsche Motorsport. But he did drive for Lion Speed at the Nürburgring 24-hour last year, and he's obviously left his overalls behind, and they've been repurposed, which is good to see. And I tell you what, hopefully a little bit of that magic touch that Jam has will rub off there, because he's certainly one of the best.
That's true. I wonder whether Dennis Bone thinks that they're giving him a few extra tenths here and there, just having that name on the waistband. So the same cars as mentioned in this session as was with the previous case, but different drivers, and Adam Lashko able to go a little quicker this time. We'll compare the times from Q1 with Q2. So Lashko's just done actually a 201.088, so he's quickest in this session. He's not quite as quick though as his teammate David Vizecki. He needs to find a 1.7 seconds actually, so a little bit shabby so far from Adam Lashko. Might just be easing himself in to this session. We've not quite had half of it yet, so there's still plenty of time to find where the grip is. 29.0 seconds through the first sector there for the Czech, so he is getting quicker all the time. But another man to watch is Daniel Miller, about to cross the line, an absolute best for this session through sector 1, 28.9, but he was slower through sector 3, so it was purple, green and a white time, which is nothing special basically, but one of each of the different colours on that same lap for Daniel Miller, and when you add them all together, a 201.6. So again, that is not quite as quick as the qualifying one time. 202.0 is Michael Bonk's best effort in the BMW M4 for Hoffer Racing. So it's the Mercedes from Bulgaria that is quickest, just as it was in Q1, but we still need to get a bit more time out of Adam Lashko, and he'll do his level best to try that during this lap. I didn't take note as to how many laps were generally completed in Q1, but three of the cars actually bailed out before the session was over, with 3 or 4 minutes still left on the clock. I reckon maybe you can squeeze a 4th lap out of it, and then, unless you're feeling like you're learning the track and getting quicker in yourself, but as far as the tyre performance is concerned, I think any more than about 4 laps and you're asking a bit too much.
I think also, Johnny, you've got to be kind to your teammates as well, because they have to jump in the car on the same tyres. Yeah. So I think if you've got to be honest with yourself and go, that's the best lap I've got together, and if you feel like that's the best lap you can do, slow down and go take the car back into the pits and keep the tyres as fresh as possible for those who are going after you. So you've got to look after the tyre through the whole qualifying session. So rather than go out and do 4 or 5 hot laps and then leave no tyre for your teammates, who I'm sure won't thank you for it.
Yeah, it's all about being considerate as well as fast as possible, isn't it? Let's get another quick word from the pit road.
Johnny, I've made my way down to the BMW garage, Hoffer Racing by Bonk Motorsport. Haven't got too much time to talk with Martin Kroll because Rainer went out first and Michael is in the car at the moment, so you're due next. How's the week gone so far? Have you managed to get a few laps in?
Yeah, it's lots of fun. It's nice weather, except yesterday evening, but it's fantastic to drive this year, yeah.
And how is this circuit? Is this one of the circuits that you like?
Yeah, I love it because it's not so far away from our home, because I live in Switzerland, so the other racetracks are much more far away.
Not quite so close that you can drive home and sleep in your own bed, though, but that's a key thing if you can do that. What are you hoping to achieve? Not just this weekend, but this is the start of the European part of the Hankook 24-hour series for 2024.
Yeah, so we try to go all the races, but I don't have time Portimao, but maybe the car is running.
Oh my goodness, you don't want to miss Portimao. How can you miss Portimao? It's a fantastic track.
Well, my wife has birthday, so...
That's all right. That is the best excuse. In this session, I was just talking to one of your competitors. There's only 4 cars. How important is it to qualify well here? Or is this just about really getting more miles under the Hankook tyres and getting yourselves dialed in?
Doesn't make sense, this qualifying, because you're just 5 meters in front of the other car.
So there's no sense in taking risks?
No. No, just rolling around and that's it.
Well, enjoy it. It's the perfect weather to do it. Martin, race well this weekend.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Martin Kroll, very relaxed about qualifying. I suppose a lot can be put on these sessions and maybe unnecessarily. I still think track position can be key, though, at the start of a motor race, particularly here at Mugello, because there have been incidents through the years, after this year, the 10-year history of the Mugello 12 hours, of incidents actually on the first lap. I remember one time when one of the key Ferraris that year actually fell off the track at Luco Turn 2, the first lap of a 12-hour race, and that was partly to do with how it had qualified. So it's not necessarily, I mean, bragging rights they always go on about PMAC, but I think, you're trying not to be mid-pack at the start and involved in an incident not of your making.
I think so, and I think it's important for the whole spirit of the team as well. If you put in a really good qualifying result, it's amazing how it gets everybody's shoulders back and chins up, ready for the races on Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, I think it's very, very important. Best lap of the qualifying so far in GT4 for the PCR Mercedes. They've got it down now to a 2:04.481. That's Josep Pereira in that very eye-catching highlighter yellow, red and black Mercedes.
Yeah, the Ferrari I was fighting around for that had the incident a few years ago. I have to look up exactly which year it was, but it was the Scuderia Praha Ferrari. So we've moved on in terms of teams from the Czech Republic to Bugera ZM Racing instead. And this Mercedes, fastest so far on the averages because of a 1:59.3 set by David Vesecki and his teammate Adam Lashko with a 2:01.0. So not able to go quicker than his teammate, but as Peter's made the point, might be down to tyre wear that, and therefore quite a bit of pressure in this final qualifying session to make sure you keep it on the road. I'm sure the tyres will have so much more performance in them, but in terms of peak time, that might now be well and truly in the wake of these cars. And it's a question of the skill and the application of your third and final driver, and which teams have selected whom for the final session in a moment or two. We've still got, though, a little over 90 seconds of this session still to go. 2:04.481 for Josep Pereira in the 418 Mercedes for PCR Sport. In a very attractive livery, as Peter makes a point, through the Biondetti, straight lining that chicane as much as possible. Then you have to make sure you muscle the car over to the right-hand side and brake as late as you dare into Bicine corner. Remains to be seen whether Pereira is going to stay out. He is getting quicker all the time, so why not? And that's exactly what he does. He's done a personal best middle sector, a 38.9, and over the line he has been quicker through that final sector, even though Biondetti was full commitment on that particular lap. But the Dayglow yellow, the highlighter yellow PCR Sport Mercedes, heading into the first corner at San Donato, at least for one more time. This will be his final effort, in fact, because there's less than a lap times left on the clock. We're into the final minute of the session, Peter.
That we are. So one more chance then for the 418 Mercedes, the Spanish crew, based in Catalonia. And Josep Pereira taking that last opportunity, but it looks like he's backed out of it now, so deciding to leave a little bit of tyre left for the upcoming driver. And it will be interesting to see who the teams elect to take the third and final qualifying session. Some of them running with running with 3 drivers, so that's a little bit easier to work out. But some running with 4. For example, Bagheera, they do have a choice of 2 drivers to put in. For PCR Sport, it will be Harriet Araburena who will take the wheel, who's the most experienced driver in that crew.
Yeah, so only Lion Speed that have the choice to make, because I'm hoping my entry list is as up to date as possible. It was printed just minutes ago, so it should well be. But all the other...
Mine was maybe a couple of hours ago, so you're well ahead of me, Johnny.
Well, there isn't a V and then a number next to it telling me precisely how old or new this entry list is. but it's still warm from the printer, so it's pretty new in terms of being printed seconds before the first qualifying session went live. The checkered flag is being displayed, although Josep Pereira is yet to see it. He is in the final sector though now, and as you've mentioned, backing off significantly, heading into Colin Chow now, so he won't see the checkered flag, I'm almost sure of it, on the racetrack. Instead he'll divert right and down the pit lane. You'll have to miss the fueling area out, of course, because it's parking in front of the garage, adhering to parc fermé rules, and the drivers will be switched around. But that strange dynamic now of a checkered flag being waved to nobody because they're all in the pit lane. But we can understand the reasons why. Actually, it remains to be seen what Pereira is going to do, but he has already lost about 10 seconds compared to his best time so far. So I'm sure he is going to dive right now and into pit lane, and he does exactly that to switch over to the third and final driver in the PCR Sport, who, as you mentioned, is Harriet Araburena. And also we've got Aliyah Kolac to come in the Bugera ZM Racing crew. Decision to be made at lion speed, but the remaining driver in Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport is Martin Kroll, who we were hearing from moments ago, with John Hindhoff in the pit lane. So a picture of serenity down in pit lane. It's a glorious day in this part of Tuscany. There is a cloud in the sky, but it's way away in the distance above the mountains, and immediately above the racetrack, just clear blue stuff, and a perfect time to go racing as the temperature continues to warm on this spring day. So Josep Pereira setting a 2:04.481. That gives the PCR Sport Mercedes an average of a 2:05.880. Daniel Miller managed a 2:01.632 on his final tour in the Lion Speed GP Porsche 718 Cayman. So the car's average so far is a 2:01.4 to put it third. Second fastest, thanks to Michael Bonk's 2:02.0 in his session, gives the car an average of a 2:01.343. So the BMW from Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport is currently second fastest, but 1.1 seconds clear after a 2:01.088 is the average time, a 2 minutes 0.2 for the Adam Lashko David Vasecki combination for Bugera ZM Racing and their Mercedes AMG GT4. So it'll be a Merc fastest going into the final qualifying session, but different drivers, same tyres, same fuel load as well. And what will this session bring for us? It's a rare treat, I suppose, for everyone involved to experience the Mugello circuit pretty empty. So you get the chance to really know how quick the car can be, unlike any of the previous sessions this weekend.
That's a rare treat, isn't it? A wide open Mugello to enjoy it as you wish, with air temperature nice and warm but not too hot. Just absolutely perfect to come here in early spring in the beautiful Tuscan hills. And of course this Mugello circuit, they've been racing here on this layout since 1974, but prior to that they had a 38-mile circuit which wrapped around the whole Tuscan countryside and was raced in by some of the greats. Enzo Ferrari raced on that circuit, Joe Sifford, Paulie Toivonen, Vic Elford, etc. It ran all the way up to 1970. Can you imagine that? Some of the cars that took part there, and was won in 1964 by a certain Gianni Bulgari, who made his name in the other thing that Italians are very famous for, fashion.
Yes. Well, I suppose, I mean, there is great history of road racing in this part of the world. You think of the Targa Florio, you think of Mille Miglia as well, and I would imagine the Mugello circuit you talk about, that was on, well, a segment of it on closed public roads.
I think all of it was.
All of it was,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why it was eventually stopped was because practice they did not close the road. Can you imagine that? So
I'm laughing.
Yes.
I don't think anybody would have been laughing if they were actually involved with that, apart from maybe the competitors. But imagine if you're just out for an afternoon drive and you're unaware of this event even taking place and you get suddenly swamped. That would certainly grab the attention.
Joe Sifford goes flying past you in a Porsche 910. Yes.
Was he on the wrong side of the road now?
Yes, the man's an animal. Slow down.
Yes, I can understand why that was stopped, although wouldn't it be nice to spend a day or two in that kind of era just for a short spell and then come back to 2024. There was something about those days that sadly will never be repeated, but they were kind of made of different stuff, you get the sense. I would love to have been on a grass bank observing it and not be directly involved. 15 minutes on the clock again.
A safe distance, I think, would be the best way to enjoy that style
inside,
of
not
style
inside
of
a bend, not outside is the key, I think. Yeah. So, Aliyar Koluch, who has now taken charge of the 416 Bugera ZM Racing Mercedes, he's got 1.1 seconds to lean on, and that's on an average as well. So there's only been one car in a 159, and that was significantly in the 159s, a 159.3 from David Vesecki. Everybody else perhaps struggling a touch with these now rather worn tyres. Not in terms of a race stint. Hankook built a terrific race tyre, but for qualifying, you're going to have to be hanging on a little bit here if you really want to commit hard for this final qualifying session. Before this really gets into the business part of it, though, let's head to the pit lane once again and hear from John.
The AMG GT4 is generally regarded as one of the best balanced GT4 car. So does it go well round here? You don't have to lean on it too hard to get a good lap time?
Yeah, we like it, GT4 Mercedes, because it's a very nice balanced car and you don't need so much push and the time it's coming.
Now, what have you told Alea before she got into the car? Just go and enjoy herself? Only 4 cars in the class. There's no need to put pressure on anybody.
Yeah, we try make lay low, but very fast, because we try every training and every run up. We try the best.
And will it be the whole season in Europe for the team and yourself?
Yes, we are all season in 24-hour series by Hankook.
And why do you choose, of all the places that you can come and race, why is the Hankook 24-hour series the place that you and Bugera want to come and race?
Because before we have a team for truck racing, and now we have a team for a GT. And our boss, Martin, choose this series because he say we must learn somewhere. And this is a really nice series for learning the guys and also the drivers, us, for next step somewhere, a bigger series.
And the team name? Bagheera, Bugera, Boogie, what? How do we say it?
Bagheera.
Bagheera?
Yes.
Like as in the cat in Jungle Book?
Yes.
Oh, okay, Bagheera, okay. Adam, thank you very much. Go well at the weekend.
Thank you very much.
I reckon it was 2006 when Adam was last racing at MUGELLO, and that was part of the FIA GT3 European Championship. It was in, get this, a Corvette Z06 with Team Car Sport Callaway. He only did 2 races that year, a Z06 GT3, and raced with Jaromir Jiric. But that year, that championship was won by the late, great Sean Edwards. Phil Keane raced for him that season as well. It feels like not that long ago, but it's 18 years. And he's had nearly 2 decades in European truck racing since then as well. But a vast and varied career for Adam Lashko, Peter. World Touring Cars, Porsche Carrera Cup, Deutschland, and then a few years in the FIA GT series as well, in GT1s at its peak.
quite a diverse number of cars and series, and I do wonder if he's driven his truck around Mugello. I guess he probably has. Getting that thing to change direction through Casanova and Savelli can't be the easiest thing to do. It's great to have Bagheera as part of the 24H series and bringing their skills to the championship, and like I said earlier, very, very close to winning the GT4 series last year, and I'd put them up there as one of the favourites for this year's championship across the variety of venues that we'll visit over 2024. Jaromir Jiric was on the entry list leading into the race, but not taking part, so they are down to 3 drivers, as your entry list rightly mentions, Johnny.
Yeah, but
the JP edition.
I thought Jaromir had some history with Bagheera, as in recent history as well. So Jiric has raced with the crew before in this Mercedes, and interesting that he was initially going to come to Mugello. I'm sure he is gutted not to be here for whatever reason, but thankfully they do still have enough drivers with their 3. And Aliyar Koloc, then the final driver to be plugged in. He is also a semi-pro, like David and like Adam. Vincente Dassi, Josip Pereira and Harriet Arua Barina, they are all AM drivers. And then the combination in Lion Speed GP, 1 semi-pro and 3 AMs. Remember, that's a 4-driver lineup there. And the 3 AMs in the GT4 category for Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport in their BMW M4. So Martin Kroll piloting the teal bonneted BMW, which is about to head over the line now. Times-wise, we have a 2:01.6 for Aliyar Koloc then, who is continuing to keep the 416 Mercedes at the sharp end of the field. The average now at 2 minutes 0.7. Next nearest car has just become the Patrick Kolb-driven Porsche 718 Cayman. It was actually a 2:03, which was the closest time, but Kolb has got that gap slightly more respectable now, because on the average it's only half a second. So Patrick Kolb making things very interesting in his Porsche 718 Cayman from Lion Speed, just doing a 2 minutes 0.8, and that's an absolute best through all 3 sectors for this session. So car 424 up to second fastest. Martin Kroll is third fastest in the BMW. He's done a 206.8 and a 203.5 from Harriet Arabia-Barina, and the 418 car is currently fourth fastest for PCR Sport.
So it must be interesting for these drivers getting into the car after their teammates have put maybe 7 hot laps on the tyres already, and in certain places when you're really leaning on the tyre, you're going to be it's going to feel kind of strange actually to get into the car with those used tyres on and make the very best of it. It's Aliyar Koloc, she's coming out of the final corner now, not tracking on a personal best at the moment. Up to the line, going to have one more run at it, I think, before it's all she wrote.
Flashing of the Lumarank system in the windscreen, indicating that AKO, which is the short code for Aliyar Koloc, fastest once again, 2:01.673 in this session, but a 2:02.205 that she did earlier on, or has just done in fact. So you add all the times together, 2 minutes 0.704 for Koloc in the Mercedes AMG GT4, and the gap is half a second back to Patrick Kolb still, but Kolb went a little quicker through sector 1 on that particular lap, 2 minutes 0.931 for car 424. Martin Kroll is getting faster, still in the 2 minute 06s, but as Martin mentioned to John, not that bothered about qualifying. Does give him chance, I suppose, to experience the car at this time of day, because with 6.5 hours of running tomorrow in the first segment of the race and 5.5 hours in the Sunday segment, we will be racing at this point of the day on both Saturday and Sunday, so it could be useful data to be retrieving. But that difficult dynamic, really, of how you treat that first 6.5 hours. It hasn't always been split like that before. Here we've had 3 hours on what was a Friday evening, and then 9 hours of running on a Saturday. We may have also had a 4+8 as well. Unusual for the Mugello 12 hours to have more racing on day one than day two. And the question as to whether that theory of trying to stay on the lead lap has to go out of the window in this type of format. It's more about, you know, being well placed in the greater picture, whereas before, if we had 3 hours on the first day, you didn't really care about running the full 12 hours. Just treat it as a 3-hour race, and you must stay on that lead lap, Peter.
And of course, through the variety of driver lineups that we have, you've got to be super tactical on which drivers you deploy and when, because they all have different minimum and indeed maximum driver times that they've got to adhere to, and a big part of the strategy is to get that absolutely right, and indeed finishing. I think if you can get to the end of the first part of the race weekend on the lead lap, then you really are set to fight. But you know, ideally you want to be on the lead lap and have a good load of fuel in, and maybe even some fresh tyres to come back to on Sunday morning. So I always love that part of the 24H series, which is really unique. We don't see it in any other forms of international endurance racing. So over the line comes the GT4 RS for Lion Speed, still sitting second on the averages right now, while the Bagheera Mercedes, Aaliyah, getting some pretty interesting angles going. I think those tyres are maybe a little bit past their best. The big Merc moving around quite a bit.
Yeah, that's again indication of how hard it's been worked over the first two 15-minute segments, I suppose. You don't often get this type of handing tyres over used tyres to a new driver in the race. Sometimes the pros are asked to do it in other series, but it shouldn't be necessary for the race, because as long as your budget allows for it, there's no restriction on tyre. I think that's still the case in this championship. You can just keep throwing Hankooks at the cars. Certainly it's not governed by any part of the regulation, so you don't need to worry about that in terms of the race. But for qualifying, because of the parc fermé conditions between each of the sectors, each of the segments of qualifying, then the new drivers have to be very wary of potentially how the tyres have been treated. And I'm sure the first lap or so is exploratory to try and work out how much grip's likely to be beneath you. As now into San Donato will go Aaliyah Koloch with how much time left on the clocks? Just under a lap's worth time, I would say. So there'll be this and then the checkered flag for Koloch if she's got any more performance on those Hankook tyres. 29.8 through the first sector would rather indicate that it's not quite there anymore, or she's deciding not to push, whereas Patrick Kolb's done a 28.6, which is an absolute best for this sector, but a 38.4, well, that's there or thereabouts, actually. So Patrick Kolb about to cross the line now. He's needing to find only half a second on the average times. He does so with a 55.2, and it's a 202.4 in total. So that is a couple of seconds away from his best lap. And we are probably settling for the positions now between Aaliyah Koloch, Patrick Kolb, and those are the only two cars remaining on the track, because Martin Kroll's parked it and Harriet Aruba-Reina has done exactly the same in the 418 Mercedes for PCR Sport.
It looks like there's not much left in the tank for Aaliyah Koloch at the moment, but it shouldn't matter too much as things stand. That would put Bagheera on pole position in the GT4 class, and they've got a really balanced driver lineup, all semi-pro drivers. Whoa, massive moment there for Patrick Kolb. Wowee, coming out of Savelli, I think that was, he had it absolutely sideways, very nearly lost it.
Well, any influence of the fact that this session is over rather counteracted by Patrick Kolb, because he is very eager indeed. He's probably been told by the team, you're only half a second away from nabbing pole position at the death of this session, but none of the previous 2 times in the sectors are green, let alone purple. So Patrick Kolb unlikely to go quicker this time around. Heading out of the right-hander at Corin Chow through the chicane at Biondetti and down towards Buccini. I'm sure he will dive into the pit lane now because the clock is at 0 and very little point in burning the extra fuel as the slowing down lap. This isn't going to be an improvement. So, although Patrick Kolb's still on it, no, he is going to finish the lap on the track, in fairness, right over the curbs. Hasn't been told. It's a 2 minutes .863, which is the best time of the session. I beg your pardon. So he managed to do that somehow without any personal bests for this session. I think maybe my timing screen is a tad glitchy, unless that's just been the way of the session and it's been all about the average speed through the course of it. But a 2 minutes .863 is the best time for Patrick Kolb, despite that very wayward moment, very nearly headed off onto the grass and possibly worse. Martin Kroll's previously completed lap was his best as well prior to heading to the pit lane. But you can see why Kolb stayed out on track. He shaved a bit more time away from the average, but it's not going to be enough. So Bugera ZM Racing will grab the headlines on the news bulletin to come about GT4s, because Alea Kolic has done her job and made sure that 2 minutes .7 as an average keeps the Bugera Mercedes fastest.
Well, what was in the tank there for Patrick Kolb with a 2 flat .863, which is 1.5 seconds off the fastest time we've seen in this entire qualifying, set by David Versecki, but with obviously much older tyres. But I think he must have lost, what, half a second, 3/4 of a second there, Johnny?
Yeah, it could well be that. I'd like to just describe that moment to you again to see how costly it was. But maybe he was able to find another 2 or 3 tenths. I'm still not convinced it would have been quite enough to trouble the pole sitter in 416. So here are the final order for the cars in the GT4 category. 416, Bugera ZM Racing and Alea Kolic setting a 2:01.6 to give the car an average of a 2 minutes .7 and to be quicker by half a second over the Patrick Kolb, Dennis Bone, Daniel Miller and Jose Garcia combination. We didn't see Jose in the qualifying session, but of course we will in the race. Lion Speed GP, second fastest. Hoffer Racing by Bonk Motorsport, Martin Kroll, Michael Bonk and Rainer Partel in 431 were third fastest, and the PCR Sport Mercedes of the Catalan for Vincenti Dassi, Josep Pereira and Harriet Arua Barrena completing that session with a 2:03.5 to give the car an average of 2 minutes .05. More reaction from the pits after qualifying for GT4.
And down at the pole sitting GT4, Johnny and Peter, the Bagheera have done it. Ali, well done. A bit of pressure there because you were up against Patrick Kolb, who we knew was going to be quick in the Lion Speed. What were the team telling you?
Well, we have a good driver lineup with Adam and David. I think they're really good. So I was just we didn't have much driving time, so to take it as a test, and we end up getting pole position, so I'm really happy. And yeah, it's going to be a long race, so we're just going to see how it happens.
How's the car on the track? Have you got a car that all three of you are happy with?
Yeah, I think so far no complaints. We're all feeling pretty confident. So yeah, it's going to be I think a lot is going to happen this weekend, but we're all feeling really good, and our times are looking so far pretty good. So the competition is tight, so it's going to be really fun.
It's a small GT4 class, but there's a lot of competition in there.
Yeah, it's not a lot of cars, but there's some close fighting. So I think it's going to be really interesting. Well done to you and the team. Pole position for GT4. Thank you very much.
Did a splendid job, the 19-year-old, with, I think it's tri-nationality, with strong ties to the Czech Republic, and hence I think the reason why there's that combination or collection with the Bugera team, but she's also Emirati and also from the Seychelles as well, so triple nationality, the 19-year-old. and lots of experience in, again, all disciplines of motor racing. Done some Euro NASCAR, some single-seaters, and also a champion in the FIA Middle East Cup for cross-country Bajaj. So we a chance to look back then on the action-packed 45 minutes in total of qualifying, separated by about 5 minutes each of those sessions. And GT4 with that chance to experience the Mugello circuit all to their own. But it was all about the 416 Bugera ZM Racing Mercedes in the end. Just about half a second clear of those other cars in the GT4 category. And now we can look forward to qualifying for a mixture of categories. The 992s, which by definition is for Porsche Carrera Cup cars, separated by their driver combinations though. So we have 992 and 992 AM. GTX, which is a kind of come one, come all type category. If you're not eligible for GT3, but it's a GT-derived car, then into GTX you go, and always tricky to pick a winner from that division. The Vortex is here, of course, the Vortex 1.0 from Team Vortex V8. And then fabulous entry from GT3, again split across 3 different categories. It's not called GT3 Pro, just simply GT3 without a suffix, but that is effectively a pro lineup and admits as many of more pros than any of the other categories in GT3. Pro Am, which by definition again is a split category depending on the professional and the amateur drivers that you've got. And then if you choose to go with an all AM lineup, then that is the most numerous that we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 GT3 AM cars of the 14 that have entered. But there's also, and this is an extra element to this year's race, some mandatory penalties that will have to be taken both on Saturday and Sunday in the race itself. And again, this is all related to the slight complication with the alternative fuel flow. So there was a bulletin issued, document number 09 if you're interested, that all the mentioned teams on that will have to take a time penalty in both part 1 and part 2 of the race. It applies basically, Peter, to the Ferraris in GT3, to the Porsches in GT3, and to the 992 non-AM cars. We'll call them the pro cars in this instance.
That's correct, yeah. So there's only 2 cars in the GT3 Pro class, if you like. One Porsche 992 GT3, which will have to take a 60-second penalty on Saturday and a 60-second penalty on Sunday. Likewise, for the Ferrari 488 GT3, will only be a 30-second penalty in part 1 and the same again in part 2 on Sunday. For the 992 Pro cars, or non-AM as you rightly say, 105-second penalty for them to serve in the pit box in part 1 and 2. That is all down to effectively equalising what we would normally see with a limited fuel flow with the pit equipment that we would normally have, but as we've previously discussed, it's not here. So it's effectively equalising that out so that we can have a nice balanced race between the pro cars and the non-pro cars.
And there's a little bit of an interval just to make sure that the logistics in the pit lane are completed correctly, because obviously the GT4 cars are having to be checked in a sense by the scrutineers post their session, but then other cars that weren't involved in that previous session are now permitted to head out onto the pit lane entry road. pretty much everyone here will have a garage to themselves, although we have had, I think, garages shared by teams, a la the Nürburgring 24 hours, or a domestic Nürburgring Nordschleife race, whatever they may be called this year, because there seems to be much conversation about that at the moment. Was, of course, due to be a race meeting at the Nürburgring Nordschleife this weekend, and that was cancelled with very late notice. As the cars now head out onto the racetrack, down towards San Donato. And this is probably far more crucial about where you were in the pit lane queue, because if you're the first car out, which is a silver Porsche, haven't quite identified which one, you may be on top of that. Is it the Red Campbell's car with a new livery? Or one of the Red Ant machines? It's certainly got a red animal on the top of it. It's the 909 as it turns left. That's the sequence of corners at Lucco and Poggio Secco. Materassi and Borgo San Lorenzo, the next chicane type corner, although much faster than the previous one. And as I say, Peter, it's all about probably road position in the pit lane more so than where you are on the track here in terms of getting a good time.
Well, I think you've got to get on with it here, because it's going to be a busy track, and we were going to have 32 cars out on track in this qualifying session. So if you're at the front of the queue, get out there and put your hot lap in. I think that's really important, because we could see some cars tripping over one another in their hot laps here. So very important, particularly if you're in the 992 class. If you have a poor qualifying, you leave yourself with an awful lot of work to do. The Red Camel's car indeed is normally in a beautiful kind of yellow, orange and red colour. It's in the kind of factory silver. I presume that's a new car, because their old car was for sale over the winter, so perhaps the Breukers family have sold the old one and they bought a new one. It's just not been wrapped yet.
Great position to be in if that is the case. So brand new car for a brand new season, we think, and I certainly know a man to get in touch with to confirm that after qualifying has taken place. One of the Ebby Motors Porsches working its way through the section behind that big grandstand, Scarperia and Pelagio. Scarperia is the town just the other side of the little hillock where so many of the teams, I'm sure, are staying this weekend. Beautiful town in the centre there, very historic, and plenty of nice places to eat in the evening as well. Bit sideways there for the Ferrari as it comes out of Poggio Secco and down the hill towards Materassi, which is turn 4. So Materassi the left, Borgo San Lorenzo the right for Porsche number 903. 2 from Red Ant Racing this weekend, the Belgian squad, and they've gone with an all-Belgian lineup in both cars. So one's slightly more semi-pro than the other, if you see what I mean. We've got Yannick Ayrton, Red Ant, and then Kobe de Bruyke in the 903, and they are all semi-pro drivers. And then we've got Brent Verheilen, Peter Gulinks, and Michael Haverens, who are semi-pro AM and semi-pro respectively. So they're the 903 and 904 cars. And if you listen very keenly, you'll hear the engine note of Frank Villager in the 917 Porsche GT3 Cup car. So 917 is one of a couple of entries from Orchid Racing Team. They have the 963 and the 917, as mentioned. One of them is an AM car, and the 963 the non-AM. Grabbing a sight of that now, actually, for the first time for the Swiss squad. Very attractive colour scheme on that as well. Black with the teal or turquoise roof and matching door mirrors. So there's a chance, I'm sure, for many of you to witness the new paint schemes for the 2024 European season of the 24H series, some of which will have been sported at the Dubai 24 hours, and others, case in point, the Krone Racing crew. That colour scheme has been running for 20 plus years, maybe even more than that, but great to have Krone Racing here at Mugello as well, Peter.
A distinctive paint scheme, isn't it? The Krone Racing, the bright lime green with the blue stripes, running the same colours every every year. It must be you can keep reusing the team kit. I like that frugality. I'm sure that's not the reason why, but it's, you know that's a Krone Racing car as soon as you see it. Niklas Jonsson, the super Swede, on board right now, and so experienced is Niklas. He really is the star of that team and so loyal to the RPM Racing crew.
With the greatest respect, I don't think frugality has ever been an issue at Krone Racing, and because of that fact, Tracy Krone will go racing all around the world with every single weekend if he gets the chance to. And brilliant that he's found a very welcome place in the 24H series once again to get his European season underway. Just hearing from John from the pits that the Red Camel Cup car that raced in Dubai is stuck on that container ship outside Rotterdam, and it's got all the kit there as well. So that's the car that was for sale, and they gave a new 99 Cup car on order. So yes, the car is brand new. It remains to be seen whether the Dubai car has been sold, and it's just that the buyers can't actually get access to it because it's stuck on a ship very close to Rotterdam. You bought the car, it's yours, and we'll get it to you sometime this year, maybe.
Well, I'm sure plenty other people are waiting on a delivery of their new car, although they might have number plates on their Porsche. I doubt the Red Camel's car has number plates on it, so it's a rental. Well, hopefully they will be gentle with it over these 12 hours of racing this weekend.
I mean, I was going to say I can't guarantee it. They will take care of it, I'm sure, but it might be heavily used by the end of 12 hours and will have been thrashed to within an inch of its life. Catching another glimpse of Frank Villager in the Orchid Racing Team Porsche. But times are obviously coming through because we've had 7 minutes of this 15-minute session now, and Alexander Prins in the Hoffer Racing Mercedes is fastest so far, 149.790 for car number 11. Then we've got Ian James. Brilliant to have Heart of Racing here this weekend as well. Heart of Racing by SPS. So being given a helping hand by the German outfit, SPS Automotive Performance, who have, again, good history in the 24H series with a couple of race victories, I think, over the years. They brought a Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo to the party, but it's the non-Evo outpacing the Evo car right now. Prins faster than James, and by a fair segment, it's 0.7 of a second separating those two. Scott Noble in the Herbert Motorsport Porsche is third fastest, ahead of Arūnas Gasiaskaus, the Lithuanian driver for Utah Racing, in their Audi R8 LMS, so car number 71. The driver simply known as LMDV. Yes, that's his well, I don't know whether it's his actual initials, but he's gone with those initials at least for racing purposes. You think they are his initials?
I know they are.
Okay.
They are his initials, yes.
So
I
do we
won't
know
say his
what
actual
they stand
name,
for?
He's done that for a reason, I think.
You
can Google it if you wish.
the reason, but do we know, is his full name on record, or do we have to call him by his initials?
We call him by his initials.
Right, so that's not a short form because it won't fit into the correct column on the timing screen.
No.
Because I've seen that before with Torre Padula, whose other names escape me right now, but the Spaniard driver who competes a lot at the Nürburgring. But we'll call him LMDV, that's all right, that rolls off the tongue quite nicely.
It's quite cool, isn't it?
Ivan Yakomo is in 6th position, car number 12 for Car Collection Motorsport and their Porsche. And then Paulson Motorsport with a BMW. You might well register the Paulson crew with, well, go back far enough, Aston Martins from the World Endurance Championship, more recently with Honda NSXs for GMB Motorsport, but they have a BMW M4 GT3 for Roland Paulson at the moment in car number 14, and he has done a 153.2 in the opening, nearly 10 minutes of this session. What else have you spotted so far, Peter?
Well, a very strong time from our leading 992 runner, Ayrton Redant, 153.4. It's less than 4 seconds off the outright GT3 fastest lap time set by Alexander Prins. just shows you how impressive a piece of kit the 992 Porsche Cup car is nowadays, and especially in its endurance form. And it's by far our most populated class, both in pro and non-pro form. And yeah, it just shows you it's a very, very popular platform, and in the right hands, it's very, very quick.
Pablo Bugera, but not the Bugera to be confused with the Mercedes that was quickest in the GT4 category. But Pablo is where on the timing screen? I've lost him now.
56.9.
Oh yes,
a 991. he's in a 991.
Yes, and so a 156.991, which is almost a time that he probably aimed for before the session in his E2P racing car. So 5th in the Pro-Am category of GT3, Pablo Bugera, battling with Alexei Denisov in the 985. Alexander Prinz has pitted. Again, tyre preservation, I would wager, is the order of the day there for Hoffa Racing. Ian James in car 27 running second, and now with no longer Prinz an opportunity to reply, can Ian James go even faster? Well, it didn't quite count on Max van Splunteren posting a 1:48.5. Not quite at the death of this session, because we've got 3 minutes and 40 seconds still to go, but Max van Spluntren's timing could be absolutely perfect for Team GP Elite in their Porsche 911 GT3R. He's gone purple through all 3 sectors there, and going clear by a second. So that's some statement, almost as if he was waiting in the wings and then pounced in the number 32 car. I'm not sure whether, well, certainly Prinz won't be able to offer a response because he's locked in the pit lane now. He could rejoin, I suppose, but they'll be setting the car up for Q2 even as we speak. Ian James is about to cross the line now in his Mercedes, but isn't displaying any green sector times, and indeed does not go faster. In fact, it's a 1:54. So Max van Splunteren has put Team GP Elite right in the thick of things, heading into the latter 2/3 of qualifying.
I would think, though, Johnny, that the number 11 Mercedes crew, Hoffa Racing, Alexander Prinz, I think they'll be delighted with where they are in qualifying. Second overall right now. Remember, they're in the AM class, so they're ahead of their AM class rivals and indeed all of the Pro-Am cars as well. So they're looking in a really strong position right now, I would wager. So because, of course, they will be laid out in their overall qualifying order. So if you're in the AM class and you're right up there at the top of the overall running, you're in really strong position.
Ayrton Redant heading through the Arabiatas, 10th fastest, but crucially fastest of the 992s. It's entered as a 992 without a suffix, so we know that that's in the top class, just like the 909 of Ivo Breukers, just like Peter Guelinks in the 904, and also Laurent Mischbach in the 963 Orchid entered car. Who else is in pit road? Quite a lot of them, actually. Over half the field, I would say, have already parked it. Significant chunk of the GT3s, although Max van Splunteren is still circulating. His best time, a 1:47.9, puts that car top. So he's gone even quicker. 1.6 seconds clear of Alexander Prinz's... No, 2.6 seconds. Hang on. No, 1.6. I was right first time. 1.6 faster than Alexander Prinz. Ian James crossing the line now, and it was a good middle sector there for Ian, but the other two were just a shade away from where he needed to be. Heart of Racing by SPS. Herbert Motorsports' Scott Noble is still on the racetrack in the 91 car, and this very attractive livery that was debuted at the Dubai 24 Hours, looking a little John Player Special-esque with the all black and the gold piping. It's a kind of interesting take on a former livery of Herbert, and that car now heading into the final sector around the back of the grandstand at Scarperia and Pelagio. Max van Splunteren, Alexander Prinz, Ian James for Team GP Elite, Hoffa Racing and Heart of Racing SPS. So Porsche and Mercedes involved in a significant arm wrestle. the next highest different manufacturer is Audi for Jutta Racing, and then the Ferrari 296 for Bohem by Kessel Racing, driven by LMDV, I should say LMDV. I said that was easy to roll off the tongue and then I got it wrong. Car number 8 is in the pit lane, but 6th fastest, so that's a decent effort from the Italian.
It is, and of course in this the way that the qualifying format works, if you have an AM driver or whichever the lowest category driver you have in your lineup, you put them in first for the first qualifying session, then through session 2 and session 3 you place your more experienced or indeed your quicker drivers if you prefer. For Team GP Elite, they've got actually a fairly balanced lineup, all semi-pro graded drivers. Max van Splunteren, a former Carrera Cup Benelux champion, so you could perhaps argue he's the hot shoe in the car, but not overly so. So in terms of average time there, it's looking really good, that Dutch squad, and great to see them moving up to the full GT3 category. They've been so successful in Porsche Super Cup, Porsche Carrera Cup Deutschland, Benelux, etc. for so many years. Won a couple of championships with Larry ten Voorde, but to see them moving up to the full GT3 car, very excited to see what they can do.
I'm instantly attracted to the number 32 car because of its tangerine and white livery. That's not because I'm a Dundee United fan, by the way, Peter. It's the other team that has played for twice the amount of years I've just looked up. For Dundee United, it's 50 years, while my team, 100 in that paint scheme. And whereas John Hindhaugh is often attracted to the red, white and black cars, I really like that Team GP Elite car that John, I'm sure, is about to muscle his way into to have a word with Max, because they have set the bedrock nicely in this opening session. It's some statement that to be so much quicker than Alexander Prinz. Ian James did see the checkered flag out on the racetrack for Heart of Racing team by SPS, and they are not far away, currently toying with a second row start. So let's hear from Max van Splunteren, with Diana Binks this time, in fact.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Yes, I am with Max. That was a superb performance for that first part of qualifying. Now, I watched you as the session got underway, and you took your time going out. You were still here in the pit lane when the other cars had joined the track. Was that part of the strategy?
Yeah, that was definitely part of the strategy. We knew it was going to be busy here with the 992s and the GT3s all in one group. And we talked about it with the engineers and thought, well, how can we get rid of most of the traffic? Yeah, we know the tires are going to last 3 laps. So we thought, let's wait until the other guys have done 2 laps already, and then we're traffic free.
And were the conditions as you expected on track?
Yeah, definitely. This morning was a little bit colder when I did a good lap, but now it's a little bit more slippery. But in the end, it's all the guys did a perfect job with the car, and I think we have a good setup for quali.
Thanks, Max.
Thank you.
Max van Splunteren chatting to Di, and yeah, they are in a great position now, about to head into qualifying 2. The 28-year-old silver-rated driver has competed with GP Elite for a number of years now in a variety of different categories as well, including the Carrera Cup Deutschland and Porsche Super Cup, together with a handful of races in the 24H series as well. Dubai 24 hours last year, for instance. So Max van Splunteren doing his job, a 147.937, over a second clear of Alexander Prinz's effort in the Hoffa Racing number 11 GT3 AM Mercedes. But as Peter makes a point, the fact that they are in the AM category, that is a great first effort to be on the front row. Can't guarantee to finish there, of course, but we'll wait and see. Heart of Racing team by SPS, another very quick AM driver in Ian James, car 27, third fastest with a 150.2. Then Scott Noble in the Herbert Motorsport all black with the gold piping Porsche, 150.5. Jutta Racing's GT3 Pro AM car is the best within that subcategory for car 71. Then it's Bohem by Kessel Racing for LMDV and their GT3 Pro Am entry for an all-Italian driver lineup. Car Collection Motorsport number 12, 7th fastest, a 151.8. And then Poulsen Motorsport for Roland and Christian Poulsen and Christopher Nygaard. 9th fastest for Charlie Putman in the CP Racing. GT3 AM enters Mercedes, number 85. 10th quickest and the 992 division, Ayrton Redont. in the 903. Then it is MP Racing's Manuela Gosner, 153.5 for car 58. Alexandre Boches in the Kessel Racing number 5 Ferrari, number 488. Number 5, it's a Ferrari 488 that was 12th fastest. Nicholas Jonsson joining Tracy Krohn, of course, and Philip Hamprecht making that a 3-driver lineup in the RPM Racing Porsche number 907. Paolo Gnemi in the Ebby Motors 973 Porsche is 14th fastest. Then it's Mantas Janavicius for Remo Adera by Ebby Motors 974. And Centri Porsche Ticino for Francesco Finici in the 912 Porsche 16th fastest. Within the 992 AM category, there's another GT3 car from Pro-Am for Aldrius Butkevicius and the RD Signs Cholet Racing Team, number 69. Bob Herbert for Baz Kooten Racing, 925 in another Cup car, 18th fastest ahead of Evo Brokers. Luke's here as well driving this weekend, but there's no Rick as I understand it, and they have not got their usual car, 909. It's been quite a dash to get that car even on the grid. Red Ant Racing's second car, 904, starts 20th, or sorry, should start 20th if they stay where they are, but there are still 2 more qualifying sessions to come, of course. Amedeo Pampanini did a 155.4 to provisionally put that car 21st to HRT Performance. Then Orchid Racing Team, 22nd, 963. Vortex V8's Lionel Amrush, 701, 23rd fastest in that session. And the Porsche Baltic entered Cup car for Eduardas Klepikas and 3 other Lithuanians, 24th fastest so far. Gijs Bessem in the NKPP Racing by Baz Kooten Porsche, 25th fastest. Frank Villager for Orchid Racing Team, 26th. E2P Racing, Pablo Bugera, 27th fastest in car 90. Alexei Denisov for Neuhofer Rennsport, 28th. 9 und 11 is a GTX car. Martin Schlutter did the first time there, 29th fastest for Martin. Lisa Clark, Pellin Racing, 30th fastest in her Ferrari 488. Hankook Competitions Porsche for the Korean team, 911, 31st. And then Sevlaju by Duvo Racing, 32nd place for car 908. And with perfect timing, qualifying 2 has begun. In fact, we're 2.5 minutes into it, but you've missed nothing in terms of meaningful lap times. They're still either on their outlap or just starting a flyer. And it remains to be seen, first of all, whether Team GP Elite have the consistency, but also some of those teams that perhaps we didn't expect to be so high up after the first session. For instance, 3 AM cars in the top 4, Peter. How long can they stay there?
Well, some of these lineups do have strong drivers waiting in the wings. Watch out for Heart of Racing, sitting 3rd on the average right now after that first session. But they've put in their hot shoe, Roman De Angelis, the IMSA ace, and he is been put in to try and get the very best out of the tyre. Then Gray Newell will go in after that for the 3rd qualifying session, so do expect that Heart of Racing Mercedes to really have a strong run in this second session. Likewise, the number 90 E2P Porsche 991, they've put in Alvaro Parente, the 39-year-old Portuguese in, and Alvaro doesn't need much of an introduction. He is spin for Corona Gosner in the 58 Mercedes. Does well to keep it out the wall, though.
Yeah, we must remember there's an MP Racing and there's a CP Racing in this race, and they both brought Mercedes AMGs, GT3s to the party. And Karina Gosner, as you say, taking over from Manuela, and whether that was a tyre temp issue or just asking a bit too much heading out of Savelli. Problem is you can commit massively to Casanova and then realise it's been a bit too much when you then need to turn left, and you don't have a lot of time to recover. So that might have been the case where the car was just a bit too far over on the right-hand side as she came out of the left-hander at Savelli. And then it's the all-important Arrabbiatas. They are full commitment right-handers, but they're also uphill and the second one is blind, as in you can't see beyond the crest, so you're entirely reliant on the marshals doing their job and waving yellow flags. Problem is that the marshal post is well over to the left-hand side as you head through Arrabbiata 2, so you need to keep one eye on the apex and one eye on the marshal post, as white flags are now being displayed to Karina Gosner, because the Vortex is just trying to buy itself some track space, I think, in order to push on the next lap. So Roman De Angelis taking charge of the heart of racing by SPS Mercedes, long-time teammate of Ian James, and Roman's wasted no time at all in posting a 151.110, and not quite as quick as Ian James's effort, but on the average they are now faster than the opening segment for qualifying 1. So a very good effort indeed. GP Elite not showing at the sharp end, I think because we're still waiting for a time from them. Yes, that is the case. So GP Elite have dropped down the order. In fact, the car has not headed into the session yet. I hope that's all part of the plan from GP Elite. Expecting one of 3 Dutchmen. It'll either be Lucas Groeneveld, Jesse van Kuijk or Dan van Kuijk, who are all semi-pro, just like Max van Splunteren, but the car is not yet in the session. Slightly worrying with almost half of it done.
That is a little odd. If they want to get an indicative lap time, they'll need to get on with it. There didn't seem to be any panic when the car was brought in. Perhaps John and Diana will get on top of that. In fact, we're just getting a note that the tyre blankets are coming off, so right on cue.
So that is one thing you can do with tyres, presumably, is keep a little bit of warmth in them between sessions. You can't change the wheels and tyres, but you can make sure that the heat is roughly there for when the car heads back out onto the racetrack. The livery, which is very similar to Gulf over the years, but probably can't be for legal reasons. That is the Ferrari, which is just heading around the back of the grandstand now and towards the end of the lap. Kyle Marcelli in his number 29 car from Pellin Racing. Does seem to be quite an influx from the US this weekend. I don't know whether we've quite had the numbers like that here at the Mugello 12 hours before, but a number of names far more familiar with an IMSA paddock than a 24H series can only be promising for the future, Peter.
Well, I do wonder. We've got a lot of. It's great to see drivers coming across from America. Of course, CP Racing are well known. They're just part of the family here in the 24H series. But yeah, great to see some new names coming over from America. This track, of course, is owned by Ferrari, and often the Ferrari Challenge World Finals are held here. And I do wonder if some drivers are coming over to get a bit of extra experience of the circuit for future Ferrari Challenge events.
It's better than a track day, isn't it, to actually run in a competition for 12 hours. Probably far better value as well than trying to rent the track for a day, enter a race meeting instead, where the costs are entirely split across so many different manufacturers. Well, we got 130 drivers here this weekend. So yeah, it makes complete sense, particularly as the 296 is still quite new to GT3 competition, debuting in 2023. And Ferrari, with their 2 new cars, both in hypercar and in the GT3 world, had good success last year, especially in 24-hour competition, Le Mans and the Nürburgring. But still, I'm sure plenty of learning to be done with the 296 GT3 and the equivalent Cup car. Marco Frezza drives one of the GT3 examples for Bohem by Kessel Racing, and that's now the fastest car on the averages. So a 148.671 is a very good time indeed. Nobody else in either of the previous sessions has got anywhere close to that. 148. We barely had anybody in the 149s.
Well, Van Splunteren had a 147.9.
Wow, okay. Well, the point still stands. We barely had anybody in the 148. But yes, you're right. Van Splunteren did the 147. And then the 149 was set by car number 11 in the first session. I didn't note down who that Oh, it was Alexander Prinz, wasn't it? Yeah, who did the first bit of the quintet that will be piloting the Hoffa Racing car. So not quite to the Van Splunteren end of things. By the way, that car is now in the session for Lucas Grunewald. So the only car we're missing is sadly the Seb Lejeune Racing by Duvo Racing Porsche, which didn't take part in qualifying one either. But the orange and white, or tangerine and white as I prefer, car 32 is out on the racetrack now, down in 31st position because we haven't had a qualifying 2 time from it just yet, but that will be rectified in the next few moments. Marco Fretzer, did he do an out lap, a quick lap and then an in lap? It was possibly 2 flying laps at the absolute most, and now he's parked it. So real efficiency from Bohem by Kessel Racing. Marco Fretzer can allow the team to do the change around for qualifying 3 already.
And keep some tyre life, critically. An out lap, a hot lap and in for Fretzer, and a 148.6, miles faster than anybody else in this. In fact, just as I say that, Kel Marcelli's for Pellin Racing in the older 488 Ferrari has done a 148.2. So Kel Marcelli, one of our drivers coming over from North America, the Canadian driver, really impressive time. And Team GP Elite back to the top on the averages with a 150.153 for Lucas Grunewald.
Yeah, so he's not the quickest in the session by any stretch, because as you say, the 2 1 minute 48 efforts, one from Marcelli, one from Fretzer, both in Ferraris but of different designs. Then the 149 set in this session, Lucas Sundahl, the Swede, did a 149.9 and has now come into pit road. But Lucas Grunewald, 4th fastest in this session, and that puts the number 32 Porsche quickest on the averages, brought the average down to a 149.0, and that is 1.1 seconds faster than the Heart of Racing by SPS Mercedes average. Ferrari 296 definitely in the hunt though, thanks to Marco Fretzer's highly efficient quick lap. One quick lap, a 148, bish bash bosh, and then back into the pit lane for them to cycle the Kessel Racing Ferrari around very rapidly indeed. Lucas Sundahl has done similar actually. He has only done 4 laps, so he will have done 2 flyers and then headed into pit road. Ralph Bone still heading around in the Herbert Motorsport Porsche, a 154.7 for Ralph, but on the average times, thanks to the opening time from the all-black Porsche from Herbert, he is in 5th place now, and looking at a 3rd row start with Alex Fontana. Somebody else who could be set to improve again, though, is Kyle Marcelli, because he set 2 personal time. Oh no, that was on the previous lap. Sorry, that was on probably the in lap actually for Kyle Marcelli. So the car's in the pit lane. It's displaying 2 purple times, but that lap in the end was not completed by the Canadian. Other times to be wary of, though, include Christian Poulsen in the number 14 BMW from Poulsen Racing, having set his best time of this particular session. There's plenty of green out there on the last laps completed, but some of those are actually laps that next time around ended in the pit lane. So again, make sure that the tyres are in a reasonable state to be handed over, and also that there's some fuel left in the tank as well. I suppose you could elect at the start of this batch of 3 sessions to only do maybe 1 or 2 flyers to save on the fuel burn as well, which means you can start qualifying 1 with a lighter car than others.
And it depends how risky you want to go, and getting that. Not all the teams will have had a huge amount of track time to decide what is the best strategy there. So it really comes down to the team what they want to do. It was a strong lap there from Christian Poulsen with that 149.8, former winner at Le Mans twice, once in a GT Aston Martin, but also all the way back in 2009 in the Team Essex Porsche RS Spider. He won the LMP2 class.
Trust you to know that stat.
Yes.
About RS Spiders, but
yes.
There's not a stat that Peter Mackay does not know when one of those cars is involved. How close were we to get one of these at the Mugello 12 hours? Possibly not very close at all, but there are opportunities later on in the year to see some of them rolled out again, I would hope.
Fingers crossed.
14 seconds left on the clock. Lucas Grunewald being shown in the fueling area, but you're not allowed to be there, as far as I know, in qualifying. That's just the little gap, I think. Even when you don't turn right, but you flash through the correct timing loops, it shows on my screen that you're in fuel, but they very quickly get that F turned into a P and remain in the pit lane as a result. You can access the fueling come the race, but there are all sorts of different speed limits that you need to be mindful of as well. I don't know how many speed limiter buttons there are in the cockpit. There'll certainly be one for a code 60, i.e. 60 kilometers per hour, but you'll need one for 40 kph down the pit lane and one for 20 kilometers per hour in the fueling area. I would imagine 20 kph can be done manually, if you like, but there may well be a second speed limiter button in the cockpit for pit lane, and you've got to make sure you get them the right way around.
That's too much for me to think of, Johnny.
Oh,
I don't envy these drivers.
Well, the other issue is, of course, they're often on the steering wheel, and the steering wheel's not always straight, so you have to remember then which way round the wheel is, where your hands are, and the muscle memory can sometimes let you down. So there's a lot to be thinking about, as always, in one of these longer distance races. And once you've geared the car and the working space in the cockpit up for one driver, you have to make sure that in some cases the other four are happy in their working environment. So it's very busy in the pit lane again. One car remaining out on track, which is Daniel Gilios in his 917 Orchid Racing Team Porsche, and the Vortex yet to come home as well, car 701. One of a couple in the GTX category. It's Gilles Courtois who is fastest in GTX in the bright orange Vortex V8, and the 911 Racing Porsche 911 GT3 Cup MR, not eligible for GT3 competition. That's the other car in GTX. But this interval between qualifying 2 and qualifying 3 gives us a chance to catch up with Diana Binks with reaction from that session.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Lucas, the number 32, you brought that in. It's 2 out of 2 in the times for those sessions so far. The second qualifying session, you're still leading. Did you have a bit of an off? It looked like there was some stuff stuck in the front of the air.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult, especially on these tires. The first thing is like really, I think, quite good, but like the next thing you have like a lot of fuel and the tires are getting a bit more worse. So yeah, it's a bit unpredictable at some times, and yeah, that just happened. I was on an okay lap, I think, for these tires, and sometimes it happens.
What were the team saying to you as you sat in the car before you joined the circuit for qualifying 2? Because obviously you took your time going out into that session.
Yeah, I think we want to manage the traffic as good as possible. I think that was the main point. And yeah, they just say keep on driving and set a time. That's, I think, the most important part of it. But yeah, I think we managed to gap quite well, but it was a bit off on my side this time.
There's obviously a number of cars in this category. How were you managing the traffic?
Yeah, I think it was quite good now. I think with the Cup cars it's sometimes a bit difficult. You have some really experienced guys in the Cup cars, but also some less experienced drivers. But I think it was quite okay now. Did you enjoy it? Yeah, it's always very nice to drive with GT3 on such a high-speed track. So that's always amazing.
Thank you.
The all-Dutch lineup. Lucas Grunewald was the second in that combination, just 21 years old, from Brascat in Belgium, apparently, according to my stats. So maybe born in Belgium, but Dutch by nationality these days. Started off with lots of Clio racing in various championships, including the Benelux competition, and then found his feet in Porsches quite early on, actually, 5 years or so ago, with Team GP Elite, and the allegiance with that squad has remained ever since.
And Team GP Elite has always been a place that a lot of the top drivers in, not just from the Netherlands, but the Benelux region have gone to, particularly with Larry ten Voorde, who won 2 Porsche Super Cup championships and 2 Carrera Cup Deutschland championships with the team. He's actually moved this year, though, moved over to the Combe Ledegar team, but they're not short of talent to pick from, Johnny.
That's true enough. Q3 just around the corner. Let's hear from John before we get there, though.
You said it was busy in the pit lane. You weren't wrong, JP. Have a look at this. And Seb, if you nip round and turn back to the GP Elite car, there's the tyre warmers left on there, the same tyre warmers, the same tyres, Hankook tyres that were on for the last 2 sessions. And then Seb, if you spin round again, we're working them hard here. There's the buzzer, so we need to get out of the fast lane. But I want to come up to Seb Racing by Duo Racing. Seb, come up here if you can, as the cars are heading out, waiting just for that 967 Porsche to leave. Now, this is the car that wasn't out in that first session, and I can tell you why. Because they had a failure of one of these, and this is a drive shaft coupling right in the garage. Fortunately, as you can see, they had quite a lot of spares, and they've changed that in the intervening time. Now, they didn't get a time in the first session, but they were out in session 2, and they're gaining valuable time in session 3, which is underway right now.
Here we go then. This is where there's still the scope for things to change, even on the average times. 1.1 seconds feels like a big gap, but it can be altered with a small amount of shuffling, really, and also the other rows further back within GT3 to be decided too. Nice that we've got a GT3 car on provisional pole, a GT3 AM second fastest, and a GT3 Pro Am third quickest. So all 3 of the GT3 subcategories represented in those top 3 spots. And the front row of 992 contains one of the 992 entered cars and one of the 992 AMs as well. So makes a bit of a mockery, I suppose, of the various different driver combinations. Or is it just a case of there's actually a little bit of overlap sometimes, particularly on average times, between these 2 subcategories that are carefully governed? But it depends how you are utilising your driver combination, which is really orchestrated to fit well within a 12-hour race, and you can get these anomalies during a qualifying session when it's all about single lap speed and across a relatively short distance. 15 minutes each, 45 minutes in total for these sessions then. And again, we're waiting for the number 32 Team GB Elite Porsche, but this seems to be the way they like to play it. Just allow that first few minutes to elapse and then introduce the 32 car. Head back to John again.
And it is the 32 that we're with. Seb has got that in his sights at the moment. And as you can see, if you're watching the stream, and I'll describe it to you, this is a scene of absolute calm. Nobody is worried. This is absolutely planned. Everybody's standing waiting. The rest of the team are inside the garage looking at the timing screens, the little dancing ants, and the pictures in there. And what they're doing is working out when the absolute optimum time is to let this bright tangerine, I know you like that, Johnny, this bright tangerine GP Elite car going. They're allowed to put those tyre warmers on, but they're not allowed to change the Hankook tyres. Remember that. I don't think I've seen this before, where we've had the tyre warmers. They're not plugged in. They're not allowed to be, but they are keeping the heat in. They're just the covers. Seb, if you look down here, you can see that the electric is not plugged into that, but it is keeping the heat that they built up in the last 2 sessions. It's keeping them in the Hankook tyres, and hopefully that'll give them the opportunity to be able to switch those Hankooks back on for the 3rd time and propel them to a potential pole position.
It's a little bit like getting in late for tea and discovering that your meal has been covered with foil to try and keep the heat in, but it's definitely not in the oven. And the regulations say that can't happen, but I suppose there's nothing. It's about reading in between the lines, Peter, and seeing that the regulations that aren't there. And it doesn't say you can't put the tyre blankets on. It just says you can't heat the tyres from an external source.
Well, Team GP Elite are a crew that are so well versed in Porsche Carrera Cup and Super Cup racing, where you've got to work so hard to find an edge on the competition when they've been used to effectively one make racing, where everyone is delivered the same car and it's the best you get out of it from there. So not surprised to see them getting that little edge. I did remember a couple of years ago at the Rally Islas Canarias in Gran Canaria, where one of the teams put the tyres in the hire car and put the heater up full blast, which I thought was simple but effective.
Hey, try anything to just get that extra little bit of edge, and that's how competitive these championships are, folks. Trying to get one over on your team as beneficial as it may be, just for those odd hundredths of seconds probably. I can see the sense though in releasing the car much later than everybody else, because the pattern of play has been in all 5 of the previous qualifying sessions, get out as quick as you can and try and post the time as quick as you can and then park it. Well, why not flip that on its head and head out onto the track in the, I was going to say second half, it's not quite the second half with 10 minutes left on the clock, but if everyone generally is taking that methodology, then the track's going to get quieter in the final 5 minutes of the session, and that might be crucial in terms of buying yourself some track space, because bear in mind there are 31 other cars now circulating in this session, and letter P's will start to appear probably just beyond the halfway marker. Good to see that the 908 has rejoined as well, and John explained the significant or the specific reason why the Seb Lejeune Racing by Duvo Racing Porsche did not take part in qualifying 1. That unfortunately means, however quick it may be in Q2 or Q3, it's not going to be at the sharp end, because it still owes us a Q1 time and it can't now deliver one of those. Too late to do so. But this qualifying session in risk of breaking out into a race. 3 cars absolutely together heading through Corin Chau, 2 Porsches and the Vortex hanging on to their coattails, as the next car through Corin Chau is actually the 32 driven by Dan Van Kuyk. So he realised, blimey, 3 cars almost 3 abreast in front of me. I'm going to have to leap on the anchors and try and make sure I'm a long way away from those just before I start a quick lap.
And will now start that quick lap, getting as good an exit as possible out of Buccini, and then on to the long start-finish straight, making it quite a difficult circuit to set a car up for here at Mugello. There's a big, long start-finish straight, but then where you need a low-drag car, but then other parts of the circuit where you need as much downforce as possible. Corners like Arrabbiata 1 and 2, but Team GP Elite, they've been exceptional so far in this qualifying session, and hopefully for Dan Van Kuyk, he'll be hoping to finish the job and put them at the front of the pack for tomorrow's race. Because remember, with their position as a pro car, they have a 60-second penalty to serve. Not for it, they haven't had any transgression. It's effectively an equalisation penalty. 60 seconds to serve on Saturday and 60 seconds to serve on Sunday. So they need to be starting up the front.
If you are plugged in to the live timing, which you can get to, by the way, via the 24hseries.com website, just click live timing on the right-hand side. There is a tab for penalties, and I'm told by Peter Fry of Creventic that those penalties that are the mandatory ones, they will appear on the penalty tab, so that we'll know when and when they haven't been served. Basically, you get a penalty that is issued and a penalty that is then served, and that penalty page has been fairly busy through the course of qualifying. There are some track limit infringements, for example, that have been issued, and some penalties that they will need to be observed correspondingly. But yes, I'm told that even though those penalties aren't through transgression, as you say, the 30, 60, 45 and 105 second penalties that have been issued to various cars in GT3 and in the 992 categories, they will appear on that penalty tab, and hopefully therefore we'll be able to keep you updated about them. Need to be served both on day 1 and day 2, tomorrow and Sunday. 6 minutes to go. David Fuminelli is the name that is now at the top of the charts, courtesy of the Bohème by Kessel Racing Ferrari 296 driver combination, because in this session he is fastest, and that car was fastest anyway, So well, had been fastest to this point. Of course, we haven't yet factored in Team GP Elite and their Porsche, and Dan van Kuijk, because he joined the session later, needs to find about 0.2 of a second, but that's become a real dogfight now between Ferrari and Porsche for the pole position of this year's Mugello 12 Hours.
Yes, it has. And Fuminelli, his lap time, a 1:47.912, is even faster than Van Splunteren went in the GP Elite Porsche in qualifying 1 on much fresher tyres. So that's a heck of a lap. That 296 GT3 Ferrari of Kessel Racing, Bowen by Kessel Racing, is looking so strong. And I think, well, certainly the last lap is backed right off of it. I think they might come and park it now, because that is a really strong average. 151.6 from LMDV, then Marco Frezza, a 148.6, and 147.9 from Fuminelli. To win an endurance race like this, if you've got that strength and depth in your driver lineup, you are in such a strong position.
Well, unsurprisingly, this car is entered as a Pro-Am, but it could very easily be a Pro lineup because you've got Frezza being the semi-pro, but the ability to just turn on a quick lap time and turn it back off again. He did an out lap, a quick lap, and an in lap, and Frezza down in the 148s. Now a 147.9, quickest of any of the 3 sectors to date for David Fuminelli, the full out-and-out pro. And Bowen by Kessel Racing will take some stopping. However, on the average times, Dan van Kuijk is really not very far away. He needs to try and find a tenth and a bit probably to squeeze the average down to a further 0.2 in total, but it really depends on how much he needs to find. I'd have to work it out on a calculation basis to find out how much time in reality he needs to chisel away from the 150.8 to turn the average the other way around for Team GP Elite. Are they wishing perhaps that they joined the session slightly earlier than they did, or is this all part of the game plan? We haven't got any green sectors so far on this lap for Dan van Kuijk, but it doesn't mean that he hasn't got a bit more time to find. 152.662 last time around. He does go green through the middle sector. However, there's a car in front of him, which is the 973, not deliberately balking him, but there was definitely a delay there. Paolo Venerossi is also trying to set a good time in the Ebby Motors 992 Cup car. Only now can the GP Elite GT3 machine go around the outside into Corin Chow, but that will have scuppered any opportunity for Dan van Kuijk to improve, I would say. And he's got 2 minutes and 48 seconds left on the clock. Lap time around here is about a 1:50, so he'll be able to begin this lap, complete it, and start another should he choose to do that. Still chances to improve, but he needs to cross the line now, and he was about a second away in the end, so that's how costly it was encountering Paolo Venerossi's Porsche Cup car at 51.1. He probably was capable of doing a low 50, maybe even high 49 through that final sector. This is really nip and tuck. I know it's a 12-hour race, but you'd much prefer to have the racing line into San Donato tomorrow rather than being stuck on the outside line of the front row and potentially shuffle down the order early on.
And if you feel you've got the pace, you want the opportunity to deploy that early in the race, put yourself in a strong position. So yeah, this really does matter. Dan van Kuijk, with he's got so much experience in Porsche Super Cup, Carrera Cup, Deutschland as well, 2 so competitive championships. He's won in the 24/8 series before in the signature Dubai event in the 992 class a couple of years ago, so definitely has the ability to go there and put a good time on the board. He's got a very strong first sector as well, Johnny, personal best.
Here we go then. Jason Hart's also done a personal best, I noticed, through the first sector in his Herbert Motorsport Porsche. Clearly track conditions are pretty good at the moment because there are other green times coming through in sector 1. Kenneth Heyer, Felice Gelmini in the Kessel Racing Ferrari number 5. But all eyes, understandably, on Dan van Kuijk to see what he can do in the GP Elite Porsche. 0.2 of a second, probably 2.5 tenths more like on the average between David Fuminelli, with maybe a bit of local track knowledge, and Dan van Kuijk, who is green through sector 1, He's there or thereabouts in Sector 2, about to cross the line to complete his penultimate lap, and he goes quicker than he's managed all session. It's a 150.423, and the average is down again. It's now only 900ths of a second on a 3-lap average, bear in mind, between David Fuminelli and Dan van Koik. This arm wrestle at the sharp end set to continue into the final lap. Fuminelli is still circulating, so unlike in earlier sessions when the Bohem Ferrari actually pitted, the Marco Frezza drove it, Fuminelli's still out there just in case he needs to up the pace at all in the number 8 car. How close do you want it? Average times, Peter, 149.416 versus a 49.504.
It's incredible stuff, isn't it? Such fantastic entertainment, and Fuminelli has backed out of it, so he will go no quicker. So Van Koik has got to try and find something. He's not put in a personal best in Sector 1. It could just be that those tyres have given the maximum that they're going to give, as the checker flag is out while Van Koik is out on that lap. It doesn't look like he's going to find something at the moment. Looking like a front row start, though, for Team GP Elite.
The other thing that's just happened is Casper Stevenson's crossed the line with a 150.563 and bagged 3rd position from the Herbert Motorsport crew. So Herbert and Jason Hart were pushing like crazy, but actually in their focus on trying to nab 2nd place, they've actually lost 3rd and dropped to the outside of the 2nd row. So Casper Stevenson for Jutta Racing in their Audi moves from the outside of the 2nd row to the inside. Herbert Motorsport switch in the other direction. And Yannick Mettler posting a 150.730 on his final lap in the Car Collection Motorsport Porsche. So Yannick Mettler pushing very late on as well. What is Dan van Koik's final effort going to be? He does go slower in the end. There's a hint there of him dropping off the pace by about 5 seconds. In actual fact, so he probably realised quite early on that lap wasn't going to be as good as his previous, and a 154.770 does not alter the average times, which are so close on the averages. Actually, Fuminelli and Van Koik separated by a decent chunk of time in that qualifying session alone. In Q3 they finish 1st and 4th, but when you total up the times from the earlier 2 sessions, it's 1st and 2nd, and less than a second separate the number 8 Bohem Kessel Racing Ferrari that will start from pole position, and the Team GP Elite Porsche of Dan van Koik late on, number 32, that will have to make do with the 2nd position. So it's all smiles at Bohem by Kessel Racing for car number 8, and they're all Italian lineup. LMDV doing the 1st session, Marco Frezza qualifying 2, and David Fuminelli qualifying 3. And they look very, very happy with themselves, understandably. It's their home race after all, and they're going to start the first segment tomorrow from the best position.
They'll be delighted with that, and I think their pace is ominous, Johnny. When you look at, that time from Fuminelli, a 147.912 in the 3rd session on those older tyres. Frezza, a 148.6. Nobody's really getting close to them. Team GP Elite, the only one, but remember, they've got these 2 penalties to serve, being a pro car. So, Bohem by Kessel Racing, looking very strong right now.
Certainly is the case. Let's hear some reaction then from qualifying 3. Here's Diana Binks.
I am with David. He's just jumped out of the car. David, how confident were you at the start of that final qualifying session that you're going to take the pole position?
So, no, first of all, it's a great feeling. Thanks to my teammates, to the team. They did an amazing job. To be honest, I didn't have high expectation because we struggled with the car in the past 2 days. The condition changed massively. The rain came last night and the track was so different today. So the car, to be honest, was not easy to drive at all. But, we gave everything, Leo, Marco, myself, also our teammates. So amazing feeling because, with our Pro-Am lineup and with the bronze in the car, we did an overall pole position. So that's great.
At what point did you feel it was coming to you?
To be honest, I didn't have a reference in the car. So when I did the first lap, I didn't expect to see a 47. So when I saw 47.9, I said we might have a chance, but I didn't know what the other guys were doing. So to be honest, I was expecting maybe to be in top 3 overall, but to be P1, it's amazing.
And as you came in, all your teammates were rushing to see you. It looks like everyone is obviously highly excited and delighted by that.
Yeah, exactly. We are a group team of people. First of all, we have fun on track. So, the guy we're going to celebrate for sure in the afternoon, not too much, because tomorrow we have the race. And, let's keep pushing.
Thanks very much, and go well in the race. That's it from me. I'm going to hand you back to John, who's just going to give us more of an update.
Well, it's worked out quite well, actually, because we've got pole position here with David Fuminelli, and next door, if Seb follows me, we've got the pole position in the biggest class, which is the 992 category. Michele Heverens has just got out of that car. He's rehydrating at the moment. Congratulations, young man. You've got pole position in the 992 class in a very, very competitive field.
It's actually my teammates, the other car of the team, they've got pole position.
Right, okay, where are they then? Let's grab them on this side of the... See, there you go, you set all this up, and let's grab somebody from the other car. Who wants to talk? Come on, Ayrton Redan, she went out first, I think.
Yeah, first indeed. The fastest lap of the car on new tires, so very happy with it.
I was just saying that to your teammate, this is a very, very competitive class. I know there's 12 hours of racing to come, but it's nice to start at the front.
It's always nice to start in the front. It's always nice to be the fastest guy in class as well. So I think it's the most competitive class of the complete field. Maybe the front runners in the GT3 cars are also very fast. But I think this one is the fastest class in the field.
And does it actually open up your strategy a little bit that you are at the front? You can kind of dictate things as long as you get off the line okay tomorrow, Go?
No, our strategy will be the same. Go as fast as possible and to be there with as much left as possible.
We are used to a battle of the red animals, red camel and red ants. That has been a fantastic rivalry, but done in the best possible way. You guys are really respectful of each other.
Yeah, of course. Of course, with the absence of Vic now, it's a little bit in our advantage. He's the fastest one of that car as well. But it's in our advantage, so let's see how it goes tomorrow.
Good luck, mate.
Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
Ayrton Senna, of course, would have been 64 yesterday. Ayrton Redan. Di, come back in. Let's have a quick chat before we hand back to Pete and to JP. That's our qualifying today. Fast and furious as always. The circuit certainly lived up to its reputation of being fast flowing, and this afternoon the weather's been absolutely superb.
It has, it's turned out really well, but what's been great is hearing from all the drivers, the familiar faces that we have and the new drivers here, absolutely loving this circuit and this championship, which is always great to see, and always accommodating, when we're trying to do our job to get the information and the story so we can tell our listeners and viewers what's going on.
Well, we'll be back in the morning with the warm-up, or at least the atmosphere from the grid. No Nick Damon here this weekend, so Di and I will do our best to replicate Nick's famous grid walk. But for the moment, from the pit lane here in Mugello, let's hand it back to the commentary booth in the Global Broadcast Centre with Peter Mackay and Johnny, just to wrap up the times and finish. Oh, hello, the party's starting behind us already, fellas.
Great stuff, and that's what it means for being successful on a Friday afternoon. Yet the scene is set then for part one of the 2024 Hankook 12 Hours of Mugello. We'll give you details of when we are on air in just a tick, but John has detailed nicely there the top positions in the various classes. Interestingly, it's a GT3 Pro-Am car that will start from pole position in the form of Bohem by Kessel Racing after David Fuminelli's late time there, a 147.912, and also thanks to Marco Frezza and to LMDV, who did their times earlier on in the qualifying sessions. Team GP Elite were there, but not quite enough for the 149.5. Just needed to find, as mentioned, 900ths more of a second to get that pole position, but it's going to be nip and tuck for the whole 12 hours, I would suggest, certainly between Kessel Racing, Ferrari, but also that Team GP Elite, Porsche and other manufacturers could well be in the mix as well, notably the Jutta Racing Audi number 71, which late on, courtesy of Casper Stevenson's time, a 150.563, put that car in third place, ahead of Herbert Motorsport for Jason Hart, Ralph Bone and Scott Noble. Then the 12-car collection Motorsport Porsche, fifth quickest. Heart of Racing by SPS Mercedes, 27 will start from 6th place, and then the all-Swiss 4th row for Hoffer Racing and Kessel Racing with their Mercedes and Ferraris respectively. Kenneth Heyer and Felice Gelmini doing the times in qualifying 3 to put those cars into the top 8. But again, a nice mixture of Pro-Am, Am, and then that one effectively Pro car, which is the 32 Tangerine and White Porsche. Poulsen Motorsport, number 9. Sorry, starting 9th. It is car 14 for the BMW M4 GT3 for Christopher Nygaard. Then the 85 CP Racing Mercedes for Charles Espenlaub latterly. Charlie Putman did a time as well. Pellin Racing will start 11th. Lisa Clark, Kyle Marcelli, who was really charging in the middle qualifying session, and Jeff Westphal finishing things off. E2P Racing's GT3 Pro-Am Porsche, number 90, will start 12th tomorrow, ahead of the RD Sainz Cholet Lamborghini and the Porsche from Redont Racing, which is the class leader in 992. So pole sitter for Kobe de Bruyke, Ayrton Redont, who we were just hearing from, and Yannick Redont. Thomas Gosner qualifying the MP Racing Mercedes in 15th position after Karina and Manuela did times, and Luke Breukers for Red Camel Jordans.nl will start 16th place, but second in the 992 division. The first of the 992 AMS is the number 912 Centri Porsche Ticino car. Ivan Jacoma doing the time in car number 912 to put it 17th. Sebastian Loeb was in the final session there for Orchid Racing Team, and the 963 Porsche will start 18th, ahead of a second Red Ant Racing Porsche Cup car 19th, Remo Adera by EEB Motors 20th, HRT Performances Porsche 21st, ahead of Porsche Baltics, also Porsche Cup car in the 992 AM division, Bas Kooten and NKPP by Bas Kooten 23rd and 24th, perhaps indicating that the car setup on both of those is identical. 25th, the Austrian team Neuhofer Rennsport, number 985, will start from 25th place, ahead of the Hankook competition Porsche number 911. Then it is EBI Motors' second car, the 973, with the 992 edition Porsche Cup car for Paolo Venerossi. RPM Racing's Krone liveried 907 Porsche starting 28th, ahead of the best of the GTX cars, 911 Racing's offering. That's a Porsche Cup MR car, so not eligible for GT3 action. Vortex V8, also a GTX entry, and they are going to be right together then on that 15th row. Orchid Racing Team's second car, 917, will start 31st, ahead of Seb Lajou Racing. It's all the way down there because it wasn't able to take part in qualifying 1. And of course, we detailed the order within GT4 a little earlier on in the broadcast. The sun just starting to think about heading towards the horizon now, as we can look back on another 45 minutes of qualifying.
This program